you get that gamey flavor. You get that real earthiness and the nuttiness, and then Quinn was trying everybody else's, and she was like, "I like yours the best, Dad." And I'm like, "You."
The steak that I'm cooking today is a just under 3-pound tomahawk. Super excited about this. This is from our friends over at Flying Bee Bar Ranch. Super excited. Everything that we've tried from them so far has been absolutely amazing, phenomenal, bar none. When you're looking at the difference between grass-fed, grass-finished steak and conventional steak, the taste is different, the textures, just everything is so much better with the grass-fed. There's no toxins in this. You're really getting all of the good nutrients that you want for your body and all of the bad ones out. Talked about this a little bit on the channel, but my degree is in nutrition and pathophysiology, and so when I look at grass-finished, grass-fed beef, the cost is much higher, but the quality that you're getting, the nutrients you're getting, just so much better. So we're going to show you how to cook this. The first thing that I like to do is I like to salt my meat for several hours before I cook it. This is a very thick cut of meat. You can see that here. So I want to salt this for at least 3 hours. I go for at least an hour per inch of thickness. Usually I just do overnight. That works really well. But for this one, we're salting it about 6 hours before we're cooking it. So let's open this up, get some salt on it. You can see how we do it. Oh, look at that beautiful. Look at that beautiful red color. This is going to be so amazing. So there are little pieces of paper here. I'm just gonna pull them off really quickly. All right, so this is just one beautiful looking piece of meat. Absolutely amazing, super excited for this. So I did want to touch on the type of salt I use really quickly. So this is Redmond Real Salt. We used to live in the Salt Lake area. Absolutely love what Real Salt is doing. This is a healthy salt. It doesn't have any microplastics or anything that you don't want in your food. So if you're looking for a good salt, this is my favorite. Use what you like, but I like this. This is the fine salt. We don't want to use a fine salt. We want to use a coarse salt on here. So I actually have the really fine or the really coarse chunks in a grinder, and I'm just gonna grind it over this and pat it down. And you do want to consider this is a very thick cut of meat, and so we want a lot of salt. All right, so I shoot to get a nice thick layer. Just gonna pat it just a little bit, and then I'm gonna turn it on its side, and we're gonna do all the way around this. All right, so you can see that nice thick layer of salt on there. It's beautiful. It's gonna basically soak up the salt. The salt is going to tenderize the meat even further. Grass-fed beef is already really tender. Tomahawk is already really tender, but this is going to tenderize it even further. So I'm gonna stick this in the fridge for about 6 hours, and then we're gonna fire up the smoker and we'll start cooking it. All right, so we've had the salt on the tomahawk for about 6 hours now. If you can take a look at that, it's actually soaked up a lot of this salt here, not on the fat, just on the meat, but that's been able to soak in and tenderize the meat just a little bit. So you can see there, still looking really good. Looks beautiful. I'm gonna let this sit out on the counter for about half an hour or so, and then we're gonna throw it on the smoker. We want to allow this to come up to temp a little bit because the fat isn't gonna render down nearly as easily if it's cold, and just overall you get a better cook if you let it come up to room temperature for about 30 minutes. It's not going to get all the way up to room temperature, but it will come up, into the 50s or 60 degrees range. So we'll get past that 50-degree range. So that's what we're looking for. So we're gonna let it sit for about half an hour, then we'll get the smoker ready and throw it on. All right, so we've been letting the tomahawk sit out for about 30 minutes now, and it has come up in temperature a little bit. Let's actually check it out with thermopen, see what we brought it up to. And it is still very cold, 31 degrees. So probably frozen in the center still. So the nice thing here is that we have the smoker. This is going to thaw that center out. This is going to warm it up. I didn't realize how cold it was, so it's still colder than I'd like, but putting it on at 225, low and slow, is going to be a really good thing for this. Warm it up, give a lot of smoky flavor. This is probably going to take an hour and a half, 2 hours to cook, because it is such a thick piece of meat, and also because it is such a thick piece of meat and an expensive piece of meat, grass-fed, grass-finished, we don't want to ruin it. And so I'm actually going to have a probe inside of it while it's cooking. That way I can watch it just a little bit. I'll double check with the thermopen, but I don't want this to get too hot. I don't want to overcook this. I want this a nice medium rare to medium so that it's nice, juicy, tender, and just tastes amazing. So I'm gonna go ahead and put this in, and then we'll get it going. When when you're placing the probe, you want to put it down in the center. I like to come in from the top and just get it into the thickest part of the steak. Okay, so we place that. I'm going to place this on the far side because I know it's a little bit cooler. I know I have some hot spots, but we're going to place this where it can really get some nice low heat, nice smoke, and just sit there and cook and get some nice flavor. All right, and that is good to go. We'll leave it in there until it comes up to temp. We're looking for a temperature about 120 to 125. We want it to rise a little bit higher than that, 130 to 135, but I'll turn the grill up just a little bit at that point probably, or I'll sear it. We'll see what I decide to do, but we've got a little while before that temperature hits the 120 to 125 range that we're looking for. All right, so it's been about an hour and a half since we put the Tomahawk in. It was colder in the center than I thought it was, so when you're thawing out a Tomahawk, especially if it's 3 inches, make sure you give enough time to be able to thaw it out. I give it about a day. Probably needed 2, maybe 3 days to fully thaw the Tomahawk out. It was very, very frozen when we still put it in. So I put it in at 225 at about a half an hour. It had only gone from 36 degrees to 56 degrees. And so it wasn't moving nearly fast enough. I cranked it up to 250 for another 30 minutes. And then I cranked it up to 300 for the last 30 minutes. So we're at right about the hour and a half mark, and we are sitting at 119 degrees. So if you want a medium rare steak, we're looking to get it into that 130 to 135 degree range when it's finished, but it's going to raise 5 degrees. So at 120, if we're going to sear this, I'm going to take it off, and what I'll do is actually sear it on here. All I have to do is open up the middle plate. It'll heat up the center, and then I can sear it on there. Other places you might take, cast iron, whatever you're doing that way, but we want the final temp to be in that 130 to 135. Otherwise it's gonna be too raw in the center. So I'm gonna go ahead and open up the center here, start warming up the middle grates, and we'll get a nice sear on it. So on my pit boss, all I have to do is actually this little lever over here underneath. I just push it forward, and actually opens up the center. And you'll be able to see it here in a second, but I wanna make sure we're at 120 before I do that. And actually we just hit 120, so I'm gonna double check the temperature here with my thermal pen because this is more accurate. And we're reading anywhere between 110 and 120. So we have this heat here, and I'm actually gonna go ahead and sear it because it is close enough. I think it'll be just fine. And to clear the center, I use knotty wood pellets. They put off a lot of soot, so you have to clean your pit boss or your pellet smoker a lot more frequently. I'm actually gonna close that, let it heat up that center real quick. But I found that the knotty pellets, the flavor is so much better. I mix the almond and the plum 1-to-1, and it's delicious. So if you're looking for really high quality pellets, that's what I say go with. We'll do another video talking about pellets. I've tried so many different kinds. Tony has his offset, so he's done different woods, but we'll talk about that. But just so you know what I cook this in, we use the knotty woods, plum and almond in a mix 1-to-1. All right, I think it's ready to sear. Take a look at that, that's beautiful. All right, so I'm gonna sear that for about a minute or two. I'm gonna keep an eye on my temp because I want it to be final at about 130 maximum. So if it gets too hot too fast, we're gonna need to take it off. And right now I still have it at that 300 degree mark, but I've opened up the center, and so we get the flame right in the middle. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and flip this over now. I'm gonna close this grate so we don't get too much flame on it. Just want a nice sear, we don't wanna char anything. All right, we got a little grease. We actually had Tony's video with steaks, and he did something similar. We had a fire going. Just gonna keep this open, let it cook just a little bit longer, but I don't want that fire on it. All right, and we're at 126 internal temp. So I'm gonna go ahead and turn this off, take this off, and let it rest for about 5 to 10 minutes. Tip, do not touch this probe. I know that sounds common sense, but I've done it once or twice, so always use something else to grab the probe. All right, and look at how beautiful that is. That is just juicy. All right. Well, we're gonna go let it rest and slice it up and see how it is. All right, we ready for this?
So what'd you put on it?
Salt.
Anything? Just salt.
Oh, okay.
Oh yeah.
Okay. It's like butter.
See, and you're starting opposite from where I am. I always save that to the last, and then it's so counterproductive because by then it's cold. Or I'm full and I don't eat it and I have to warm it up in the microwave next day.
Here you go. Try a piece of this.
Oh.
What?
Oh, that's got a perfect little fat layer around the edge.
Whoa.
Just salt.
Just salt
On the pellet smoker.
on the pellet smoker. Mm-hmm.
There's a reason pellet smokers sell a lot of them. Or
Did you hear that, Tony?
Or maybe it's the meat. I don't. Wow. And now I have to just completely eat my words. But from earlier today, trying Tony's, holy crap, that is just such a superior steak there.
Like, I don't think I've ever had a steak that good.
I've
never cooked a tomahawk before, but
and it's not. You thought maybe it was overly smoky. Nope, it's actually
maybe a little undersmoked.
It's a little undersmoked, but this means that the meat's speaking for itself. You want to try it? You do, don't you?
All right, well, didn't mess it up. Yeah, I've had one or two tomahawks, 2 different steakhouses. That's by far the best one.
Best tomahawk I've ever had.
Yes.
Yeah,
Winner.
And we've ate some here and there where we did some reverse searing, which was an awesome way to do it because we got it up to a really perfect interior temp, and then seared it hard, like hot on a cast iron with butter and garlic. This didn't really require that much, but this goes back to what I was saying earlier today. The grass-fed, there's definitely a natural gaminess to it, but in such a good way.
Yeah.
And whatever pellets, was it like the most expensive salt you've ever bought on this planet? Or what?
Redmond real salt.
I'm trying to figure out why this one turned out.
We use the naughty wood pellets. It's almond and plum, so it's even less of a blend than most people.
It was meant to be right there.
And I think I have a new method too. I'm going to start on that cap side, but on a non-bonus. But even let's rewind the clock to where we were at the Flying Bee Bar. Every one of their tomahawks, every one of them looked amazingly. I mean, it's not like we rifled through. We reached in, grabbed the first one. Well, we didn't even grab this one. We grabbed a few. We grabbed a few, and they all looked so amazing. And they sent us away with this. Yeah. Wow. Yeah. I don't know if they knew what a great steak they were eating, because if they knew, they'd be like, okay, one for us, one for sale, one for us.
The better one for us. Yeah. I literally, I just ate dinner, and I think I could eat this whole thing.
I just got to try it with that salty edge.
That's it. Redmond real salt.
Don't ever show my heart doctor that clip ever.
How's that?
That is flavor. Wow. And it's got a lot of salt on it, but I have a hard time saying it's hard to oversalt a big, beautiful piece of beef like this.
I think the thing I learned with this one is make sure you hit temp, because I was pulling it off, got it in. It was at 109, put it back in, and then it went up to about 120, 125, and it's perfectly cooked. So, but
it didn't fight you. I mean, you would do it again?
Yeah. Oh, this was not bad. I mean, it was a longer cook. Obviously, it's like 3 inches thick when I started, so it took almost 2 hours. But that is absolutely my favorite way I've ever cooked a steak.
Oh yeah, that was fantastic, and I'd like to see if it's repeatable.
Challenge
so we
accepted.
Have to get another one. But back in the old days, I would eat that whole thing myself. Now that's my entire family's meal right there. So, yeah, I definitely have gotten a different appetite. But even after stuffing myself this evening,
gotta keep going. All right, well, Cody and Tony both made steaks as well. So if you want to see how they did it, click the video right here and we'll see you over there.